They're doing a wonderful job.
Well, I think that's part of what I was saying before. There's tremendous public support for this bill. I think we all know, well, I don't want to make Cambridge sound too special, but a lot of us in Cambridge, we're so appreciative of the open space that we do have. I think the other 350 cities and towns, we could find supporters of this update of the bottle bill anywhere and everywhere across the state. But I know, living in Cambridge, as I know you do, that there is this huge appreciation for our open space, for our parks, for the Charles River. And to see this kind of litter, it's such a waste. It's unnecessary, and it's not good for the environment. It's not good for our health. It's not necessary any longer. We could update the bill and really go far.
Now, you mentioned that of the bills of the bottles that are already covered, that 70% of those are redeemed. That means people return them to the store.
Exactly. And I want to say that number actually used to be a bit higher, because I think 10, 15 years ago, more of what people drank was Coke, Pepsi, sodas. Now people have changed their drinking habits,
which is healthy and good.
Which is definitely healthier, and so people get out of the habit, even when they do have a redeemable container. You're sort of out of the habit now, so the numbers have dropped a bit. At the peak, the redemption rate was like 83%. I think it's gone down because it's just not as much a part of everyday life as it was when everybody was drinking Coke and Pepsi and 7-Up or what have you. Now I'm really dating myself, 7-Up.
Well, ideally, in a way that you would hope that people would also switch from buying bottled water to just drinking water, which is so clean in Cambridge that, like you brought your own water bottle.
Yeah.
In a way, that is the really environmentally responsible way to go.
Well, I think there's a consciousness growing overall that we want to eliminate waste. We want to, when the economy is this tough, people look around and they say, what's wasteful, what's unnecessary. And so in a way, this is an opportunity right now. And you mentioned earlier, if I could jump ahead for a second, this bill has been pending for over a decade. And I think one of the reasons that we feel more momentum this session is that as, things get tougher, people look around and say, what's wasteful? What can we be saving? What can we do smarter and better? And this is just such an obvious, easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So I feel more momentum, from the public, even in the legislature. Governor Patrick is a big supporter. As you know from being at the hearing on October 7th, the Secretary of the Environment, the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection
testified in favor.
So I feel, there's a momentum there.
And I know former Cambridge Mayor and now State Representative Alice Wolf, she played a key role. She was there to testify.
She did. And in fact, I'm glad you said that. Cambridge's Mayor Denise Simmons made a special trip to come into the State House as a supporter, which was greatly appreciated. So I feel like there's more momentum now.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that doesn't get translated as you can just sort of sit home and wait for this to happen. We need everyone involved. As you said earlier, the strength of an organization is volunteer involvement, and we need everybody pressing for this.
Well, we see again some volunteers here near the Anderson Bridge cleaning up bottles on Earth Day. And one of the reasons the Conservancy started the volunteer program is of course, many people love to do this work, and that really has proven the case. But we also feel that once you see it and do it with your hands, that then you also become an advocate, because the parklands, they need advocates. We also advocate for increasing the DCR's budget for urban parks. As you know, these budgets have been reduced.
Absolutely.
For legislation that helps the parklands, for legislation that helps to make the water cleaner, to keep the water quantity up. There are a lot of issues, and we feel that once you have worked on the parklands and experienced the importance, you're also more willing to write a letter.
Great.
And maybe we'll come to the letter writing in a moment, but I just wanted to show this picture here of some volunteers that resort to a boat because many of the debris and floating bottles are sometimes hard to reach from the shore.
You know, this picture reminds me of a book I used to read to my kids when they were little called Fortunately, Unfortunately. You ever heard of that book?
No.
It's sort of like you look at this picture, you think, fortunately, we have volunteers who will do things like this. Unfortunately, there's this kind of litter in our beautiful Charles River. Fortunately, we have a solution to, some of the problem you see there, empty bottles. Unfortunately, it's stalled in the legislature. Anyway, the whole book is
wonderful.
Every other page is like that. It's a great little story.
Unfortunately, we also have the Charles River cleanup boat, which does a wonderful job all year round, and they have always volunteers to clean up, and they gather a lot of bottles.
Well, I'm sure that they wouldn't be unhappy if that problem was solved in a more efficient way that was, part of a system that we already know succeeds. I'm sure they'd have plenty of other great volunteer work to do.
Well, and they could cover more territory.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sure there's plenty of other work. Now let's look some more at some other figures that you have brought here with you.
Sure. Well, some people say, at the hearing, and again, just to explain, the first step that a bill has in the legislative process is it gets heard by a committee. And so this first committee held a hearing on October 7th, and a couple of legislators asked, well, of all the litter that we're faced with, aren't bottles and cans just, a very tiny, small amount? And actually, they're not. They're lightweight, but they're by volume quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we had one of the Sierra Club members brought a poster. Each year, the number of bottles that are just thrown in the trash or littered on our roadways or our parks, on our riverways, could fill up Fenway past the bleacher seats. It's
Wow.
that much stuff.
That would be a wonderful image to have, isn't it?
It was a great image. It's a terrifying image, but it's very powerful to see.
Yeah.
So the statistic we're looking at here says it's in states where there are bottle bills, which are, I believe at last count, 10, there's, from the before to the after, there's a 30 to 35% reduction in overall litter. Mm-hmm. So as 70 to 80% of the beverages are redeemed, that translates into a significant chunk of the overall litter problem. Mm-hmm. So it's an important piece of legislation.
Good. Well, we have still some more cleanup pictures, because it's always, you mentioned happy faces. People love cleaning up in the spring.
Yeah.
People love to do also cutting. But then when you do the cutting, then you come across about all these bottles, and then you gather them in the bags. As you see, we separate different bags. We have different containers so that we can recycle them, and which is important to separate them.